You're listening to New Talk on WNSR New School Radio.
Lilly Ledbetter is a women's equality activist who served as plaintiff in an employment discrimination case against Goodyear Tire Rubber. After years of working for the company, she discovered that she made much less than her male counterparts. Instead of remaining silent, she struck a nerve by suing Goodyear in a case that eventually went to the Supreme Court. In this exclusive interview, I spoke with Mrs. Ledbetter about her ordeal and what she is doing to ensure equality in the workplace. I would like to welcome Lilly Ledbetter to WNSR New School Radio. Hello, Lilly Ledbetter.
Yes, this is she.
Hi, this is Roy. My first question for you is, can you take me back to the very beginning? How and when did you find out you were being discriminated against?
Well, I've been working 19 years with Goodyear Tire Rubber in Gadsden, Alabama. I went into work one evening, and I always worked the evening shift, and I got my mail, and I found this note showing my pay, my base pay for the month, and the three white males who we four had the same job. We had the same job, identical, just a different shift. And I knew mine was right because it was to the dollar, which was an odd amount, and so there was no reason I should think that theirs was not. And it suddenly hit me that about all my overtime hours that I had lost.
Were there any hesitation? Did people try to discourage you from going forward with pursuing any type of action against Goodyear?
No. When I explained to my family the next morning when I got home, and I never discussed it with anyone at Goodyear that night or the next morning before leaving, when I got home and explained to my husband what I had found out, and I said all of these overtime hours that I have been working, and I got so shortchanged in my overtime pay for my family and myself, and not only did that affect that, it affects my retirement check today, it affects my Social Security, it affected my 401k, which I was in to the maximum that I was allowed, and my contributory pension that I had with Goodyear after the first 6 months of being hired. And it affected all of those things, and I said, my family has been shortchanged all of these years. I was legally entitled to being compensated more, rightfully, under the law, and I was not. And I said, I must file a discrimination unless you object. But I can warn you up front that if I start, we will be in this for at least 8 years, because all the cases that I had ever heard about, read about, knew about, they're never, particularly in a court system or with my husband said, what time do you want to leave? And then I had already been to my company officials thinking about retirement. I was within 2 years of retirement age, and I had already been thinking about it because of the circumstances in the plant and the atmosphere. And I had already been to my superior, and I wanted to know how I stood versus my peers. And I wanted to know how and what I could do to get my income up to help my retirement. And I said, I'm pretty sure that these men are making a lot more than I am, which I didn't know. I had no way of knowing because you did not discuss your pay at Goodyear. And my boss said, you're listening to too much BS from the men, and closed the door. So I knew that if I went to the company officials, I would not get any help whatsoever.
So talk about the legal process. How did you start it? How did that work?
Well, I went to the EEOC, filed the charge, and then they did an investigation and called me several months later and told me I had a good case, but they were backlogged. See, this was in 1998, 1999, that they were backlogged, short of help, and had a lot of cases. And I might want to get an attorney to go forward that I could get into federal court much faster if I did. So I started searching for an attorney that would take my case pro bono, and I found the Wiggins Quinn So there's another name, and Pandazza's firm in Birmingham, Alabama, and they had a young attorney, John Goldfarb, and he was the one that I wanted to take my case based on his record, and he did.
When you eventually went all the way up to the Supreme Court, they denied you any back pay from Goodyear. How did you feel about that?
Well, that was totally wrong again, because I was entitled to those 2 years back pay, and it was certainly not a lot of money, because the federal judge in Alabama, Judge U.W. Clement, had taken the lowest paid bail in the tire room where I worked and calculated my each year of back pay, which you can only get 2 years, no matter how many years you work. Even if you win your case, you only get 2 years back pay. I was entitled, he said, to $30,000 per year, which that left me with $60,000 for 2 years back pay. And that did not include, there was nothing in it for the lost overtime hours, which I had worked, was legally entitled to have that money. There was nothing in it to increase my retirements in any way. And but the Supreme Court took that away, and that was not right. That was not right.
Do you think that since the passage of the Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, that it has really changed the way that companies practice and operate when it comes to discrimination in the workplace?
It has changed some. In fact, it has changed a few of the top larger corporations and companies that are striving to achieve bigger and goals and more successful output of their businesses and better favoritism from customers. It has changed some, and they're striving today, analyzing their policies and their procedures, and they are also doing some in-house training to try to retrain some of, for example, older male employees to accept the women and the minorities and accept their ideals and their workmanship, and recognize that if they work together, they will be stronger. But there's still not enough of those. We are still lacking. I mean, we women and minorities, when the Equal Pay Law passed in 1963, our average pay was 59 cents to the dollar, every dollar the man made. Today, we still only get 77 cents. We have gained a little. But what the Ledbetter bill did, and the outpouring and the outcry from all of the organizations from Washington, D.C., throughout the United States, from coast to coast, north to south, east to west, it struck a nerve, and that nerve is still very alive today, simply because the United States families are suffering, the middle class, and we're falling every day farther behind. And this is not only a woman or minority problem. This is a family affair. Women work for their families, even if they're single and don't have children. It still affects a family.
Exactly. Well, what advice would you have for women in particular, but anyone who's going through discrimination on the workplace?
Well, first of all, they need to know the law. They need to know how the laws pertain to them. And they really, if they're young enough, maybe they need to change employers. I tell the young women on college campuses, be sure you investigate, you research, you know how the company that you're interviewing with treats their women and their minorities. Check their policies, their procedures. Are they up front with their records, and never accept anything less than what they're entitled to, because once an individual accepts lesser pay and goes into that job, those losses can never be made up. Never. There's no way to make them up.
Your legacy has sort of been one of being a women's activist and a fighter for equal pay, for equal work. Are you comfortable with that being your legacy?
I am now. I am because, as I told the president last week when I saw him in Washington, this is an awesome responsibility for me, having this law named for me, because I feel a responsibility knowing how much my family suffered, how hard it was on my family. And I'm just a tip of the iceberg, and I have heard story after story. It's worse than mine, and it's not getting better fast enough. I've got an awesome responsibility to make sure that the young people know going out in the workforce what they can expect and how they need to be educated and how they need to be groomed for these new changes and to better their lives, because when they better themselves, it will better the community that they live in, the state, and therefore our nation and our 12th and under students as well.
Have you considered running for office?
I have, but I feel that my responsibility should be where I'm at, and I go to every college campus that I'm invited to and possibly can make it. High schools, I've spoke to as low as fourth grade students. I go to women's organizations, men, and now this last 2 years, I've been on a lot of military bases and military facilities. I have also been to a lot of the top corporations in this nation to talk to their new hires or their young people, like young women engineers, because most of the big successful companies are trying to change and look at their policies. And I am so impressed when I get one of those invitations, because I'm the one who sued a corporation. But these companies, what they're recognizing is the fact they don't want to spend their money fighting a case like this. They want to spend their money in bettering their company and making it stronger. And one of the headlines in one of the articles that I read, it said I struck a nerve. And I believe that I like that headline, and it really has held true, and it's staying alive even today.
Well, I tell you, that sounds pretty good to me, and I think that's going to be the title of my interview. She struck a nerve.
Oh, that's very good. That came out of an Alabama article in an Alabama magazine, and I really did like that article because it did. And what I like when I go on to college campuses, the young men understand. They know they have their mothers. They see their sisters, and they know that someday they'll have a wife or spouse. And a lot of the men understand it. I was just down in Mississippi on a campus a week ago, and the man who brought me in, he said, I have 3 daughters. My wife works. Your legacy is very important to me and my family. And this is tremendous. I have touched a lot of people and a lot of people the way they live. And this is a heartbreak when we women, and now so many women are like myself, we lose our spouses, and then we've lost more than half of our income. But our utilities, our cost of living went up, and we're struggling to survive. And some houses across the nation, and many of them, in fact, are having to move their mothers and their mother-in-laws in their home because they do not get enough of retirement income just on their income and their half of their husband's Social Security to stay self-sufficient. This is a disgrace. It's not that these people didn't work. They just were not compensated what they was legally entitled to.
Yeah, going back to the question about you running for office, what office would that be, and when would you make that kind of decision?
That's I've already been through that. I've had a lot of pressure put on me to run in my district for the House of Representatives, and I've considered it. But I feel like that I make a more impact now, and that is another thing I talk to, especially young people in a lot of different groups. You need, when you have that, we have a voice and we have a vote. And I learned that from 1998 all the way through, more definitely than I had ever realized it in my life. I was one of those citizens who had taken my voting very lightly. Now I do not accept TV commercials, what they say. I don't accept newspaper headlines. I research that person's record. I look at how they vote. What do they support? How much money did they have, and did they have when they went into office, how much they have today? And it's so eye-opener when you look at these records. And I'm from the state of Alabama, and in 2000, we elected our first female to Washington, D.C., and she's a representative. First female ever elected from the state of Alabama.
Wow, that's impressive.
Right.
And that's partly due to your legacy.
One of them, but I choose to do what I'm doing.
That's amazing. All of these changes are because of your legacy and what you've done to help change the atmosphere. As the article said, you struck a nerve, and that's a nerve that I think is going to last for a very long time.
It affects too many people. It really does. And I believe this Occupy outcry that's going on and other things are indicating this. People are really dissatisfied with the status down at the bottom.
Very well. Well, Mrs. Ledbetter, I want to thank you for taking out the time in your very busy schedule to talk with me today. And I hope that you continue to fight the good fight. I know many people...
I will, and I would like to share with you, I do have a book. It'll be out February 28th, 2012. It's called Grace and Grit, and it's my story about my struggles for equal pay and at Goodyear and beyond.
Oh, amazing. I look forward to that book, and hopefully if you come to a book signing in New York, we can chat for a few.
I plan to be there.
All right. Thank you for talking to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and good luck to you in what you do.
Thanks for listening. This is Roy Paul.